go through each problem on this study guide so you can have a better understanding if there's any specific question that you are confused on. If you're confused on a specific question, don't feel like you have to watch this entire video. You can fast forward to the specific example that you have a question on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go in chronological order. So just make sure if you have a question on number 7 that you're just going to fast forward the video to number 7. So if I take a look at this first one, it says I'm using the order of operations to evaluate. So if I look at number 1A, I see divisions first, so I'm going to do that first. So 36 divided by 3 should be 12. And then copy everything else down. And then 4 times 2 I'll do next is 8. 12 plus 8 is 20, and 20 minus 1 is 19. If I can write 19, I would write it. Okay? If I go over and I look at letter B, 1B, I see lots of parentheses. So I'm going to do these parentheses inside the parentheses. And inside those parentheses, I'm going to do division first. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then if I copy everything else down, these all have brackets. So now I'm going to do 2 plus 2, which is 4, and it keeps in parentheses so that 2 on the outside knows to multiply it. So now I'm going to multiply 3 times 2 and multiply 2 times 4 at the same time. So I get 6 plus 8. So now I have 6 plus 8, which is 14, and 18 minus 14 is 4. So if I keep going and I do part C, Part C, when I have a fraction, I simplify the top and then I simplify the bottom and then I divide. So I just treat them like 2 separate problems. So if I do the top first, 6 plus negative 12, well that's negative 6, so that's cleaned up. So now let's clean up the bottom. 27 divided by 3 is 9. And now I have the square root of 9, which is 3. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. If I look at this next one, 1D, I notice that I have an absolute value sign. Absolute value makes it positive, so now I'm going to bring everything else down. Why this negative stayed negative was because I got it from this negative up here. So this negative wasn't inside the absolute value house, so that's why it just got brought down. So now I'm going to do negative 3 squared. So notice negative 3 squared is not in parentheses, so my answer is always going to be negative when it's not in parentheses, and 3 squared is 9. So now I'm going to do 6 times 3, which is 18. So negative 9 plus 18 is 9, and 9 minus 5 is 4. So moving on to number 2. Number 2, I'm substituting the variables for the given values, and then I'm evaluating. So evaluate just means I'm cleaning up. So every time I see an x, I'm plugging in 3. Every time I see a y, I'm plugging in negative 4. And every time I see a z, I'm plugging in negative 5. So 2 parenthesis x, which is 3, minus y, y is negative 4, minus y is negative 4. And I'm putting it in parentheses because it has a squared attached to it, plus z, so plus negative 5. So if I look at parentheses, I notice 2 negatives make a plus, so 3 plus 4 is 7. And negative 4 squared is 16, it's positive 16 because it's in parentheses, plus negative 5. So now if I do this parentheses, 16 plus negative 5, that's 11. 2 times 7 is 14. 14 minus 11 is 3. If I come over and I look at this next one, I'm going to plug in negative 4, and I'm going to plug it in parentheses because there's a number attached to that x, minus 5 over negative 4 plus 1. So remember, when I have fractions, I simplify the top, and then I simplify the bottom, and then I divide. So negative 4 squared is 16. And I'm just going to keep cleaning up the top. 16 minus 5, that's 11. So now I'm going to do the bottom because the top is clean. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3, and bring it down. 11 divided by negative 3. Can I do that? No. I'm done. If I come over here and I do part C, I'm going to plug in a negative 3 for x, and a negative, oops, that's still negative 3 because it's x, and then plus negative 2. So negative 3 cubed, that's negative 27, and it stays in parentheses because there's a 2 outside. That minus just gets brought down there. Negative 3 squared is 9 minus negative 2. Let me rewrite that because that looks a mess. So now I have negative 2 times, 2 times negative 27, that's negative 54. So negative 54 minus 9 is negative 63. And negative 63 minus 2 is negative 65. We go ahead and we keep going. I'm going to write an algebraic expression for the following statements. The sum, that means plus, of 2 times a number, b, and 4. So it's the sum of 2 times a number, so 2b, and 4, so plus 4. Part B says 20 less than the quotient of a number in 6. So I see the word than, so 20 goes to the end. And then it's the quotient of a number in 6. So that's going to be x over 6. And then 20 less than, so minus 20. Part C says 1/8 times a number plus 5. Notice I'm highlighting and underlining my clue words. So 1/8, that looks terrible. Let's try again. 1/8 times a number m plus 5. Or I could write this as m over 8 plus 5. If I look at letter D, 4/5 of a number. Of just means multiply. So 4/5 of a number x. But remember I also mentioned anytime a variable is on the side of a fraction, it really belongs on top. So I could also write it like that. Letter E, if I keep saying number, letter E says the sum of twice a number and 1/4 of a number. So I see sum. Twice means 2 times 1/4 of a number. All right, so the sum of twice a number, so 2x, and, so that's where the sum goes, 1/4 of a number. Again, I could also say 2x plus x over 4. If I look at the last one, F, 50 less than 1/2 of a number x. So I see the word than, 50 goes all the way to the end. 1/2 of a number less than 50, so minus 50. Okay? So if we keep going, if we look at these problems, example 4, it says first translate the expression and then substitute the variables if x is negative 2 and y is negative 4. So it says 5 less than 3 times the number x. So I see the word than, so 5 comes all the way to the end. So 3 times the number x, so that's going to be 3x and then minus 5. So now to find the value, I just plug negative 2 in for x. So 3 times negative 2 minus 5. So I come over here and show my work. 3 times negative 2, I multiply first, I get negative 6. Negative 6 minus 5 is negative 11. And if I do the last one, it says 6 more than, so I see the word than, more goes all the way to the bottom. The quotient means divide of a number y squared and x. So I see the quotient of a number y squared and x, so there's my quotient, and then 6 more than goes in the back, so plus 6. So I'm going to plug in y, which is negative 4, and I'm going to plug in x, which is negative 2. And now I just follow PEMDAS. So I'm going to do exponents, so negative 4 squared is 16. 16 over negative 2 is negative 8 because that means divide. And negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. If we go ahead and we look at these problems, determine the real number property that relates to the given example. So I have 3 plus 2 plus 1, and then 3 plus 1 plus 2. So notice my numbers are switching, so that's the commutative property. So that's letter A, it'd be commutative of addition. Part B, 4xy times 1 is 4xy. That's the identity property of multiplication, so that's D. Part C, 9y plus negative 9y. Well, these are opposites, so that's the inverse property, which is E. D says if x equals 3, then 3 equals x. Notice my numbers are switching around an equal sign, so that's the symmetric property. Letter E, 4xy is equal to 4xy. So notice the only thing that changed are my parentheses, so that's my associative property of multiplication. F, 3x plus 2y plus 6z equals 3x plus 2y plus 6z. Well, nothing changed, so does nothing, so that's the reflexive property. Letter G, notice I have parentheses and then I don't have parentheses, so that looks like I'm distributing, so that's C. H, 6 times 1/6 equals 1. Well, that's 6 is the reciprocal to 1/6, so that's the inverse property, so that's E. And the letter I says if x equals 3 and 3 equals b, then x equals b. So that is the transitive property because it has 3 parts. If we come down here, it says simplify the following expressions by combining like terms. So if I look at letter A, when I combine like terms, I like to draw my slashes. I'm not able to immediately draw my slashes because I have parentheses, which tells my brain I have to distribute. So negative 7 times x is negative 7x. Negative 7 times negative 9 is positive 63. Negative 7 times negative 6y is positive 42y. If I draw my slashes, can I combine negative 7x with anybody? No. Write it. Cross it out. 63. Can I combine 63 with anybody? Nope. Write it. Cross it out. Can I combine 42y with anybody? No. Write it. I'm done. If I look at B, I'm going to go ahead and draw my slashes. And let's look. 4 I can combine with negative 1. 4 and negative 1 make 3. Cross them out. Negative 2m and positive 2m make 0m. So I'd write plus 0m. But do I really need to include this? No. So my answer is just 3. If I look at letter C, draw my slashes. 4y and negative 2y make 2y. And 2y can also be combined with negative 5y. So 2 and negative 5 make negative 3y. If I go ahead and I look at the next one, letter D, I know I have to distribute first because I have parentheses, but notice I'm trying to trick you because 3 is in the back. So if you don't like 3 being in the back, just cross it out and write it in the front, and now distribute the same exact way. 3 times negative y is negative 3y. 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. And I'm done because I can't combine 3y with negative 24 because 24 does not have a variable. So if I look at letter E, I can't draw my slashes because I have parentheses, so I have to distribute first. So notice I don't have a number in front of my parentheses, which means there's an invisible 1. So I'm distributing negative 1 to everybody inside. So negative 1 times negative 7 is 7r, and I'm going to put a plus so my brain remembers it's positive. And negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. And now I'm going to copy everything else down. And now I'm going to draw my slashes. So 15r I can combine with 7r and 5r. So 15 and 7 make 22. And 22 and 5 make 27r. Negative 10 and negative 1 make negative 11. And negative 11 plus 3 makes negative 8. So if we go ahead and we keep going, these problems down here, I'm going to be solving for the variable. So I'm going to draw my line through my equal sign, and I'm trying to get n by itself. So how I'm going to get n by itself is I'm going to move the number that's furthest away from n first. So if I look on this problem, is 7 further away from n or is 13? Well, 13 is. So how do I take 13 and move it to the other side? I take its opposite, so I subtract 13 because it's plus 13. So now I have 7n equals negative 21. So then I'm going to go ahead and divide by 7. So n equals negative 3. So if I check, I'm going to plug in negative 3 to verify, does that equal negative 8? So I have negative 21 plus 13 equals negative 8. Sure enough, negative 21 plus 13 does equal negative 8. If I look at B, again, I have to get my variable by itself. How I know is because I have that equal sign. So what's furthest away from x is 6. So I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides. So I have x over negative 2 equals 4. Now I'm going to multiply by negative 2 on both sides because it's being divided. So the inverse of multiplication is division. These cancel out. I'm left with x equals 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And if I check, I have negative 8 over negative 2 plus 6. Does that equal 10? Negative 8 over negative 2 is 4. 4 plus 6, that equals 10. And if I do part C, first thing I'm going to move is I got to move 15, so I'm going to add 15 to both sides. So I have negative 2p equals negative 10, and then I want to divide by negative 2. So p equals 5. How I got 5? Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is positive 5. If I check my answer, negative 2 times 5 minus 15, does that equal negative 25? So I have negative 10 minus 15, and that, sure enough, makes negative 25. So they work. I go ahead and I do these last few problems on the back. Draw my line through my equal sign. What's furthest away from n is that 2. So I'm going to move 2 to the other side, but it's being divided. So I'm going to multiply by 2. So these cancel out. I'm left with 9 minus n equals negative 2 because negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. So now to get n by itself, I'm going to move 9 first. So since 9 is positive, I'm going to subtract 9. So I have negative n equals negative 11. So notice n is not by itself because it has the negative. So there's a negative 1 hiding in front of it. That says negative 1 times n. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. So n equals negative 11 divided by negative 1 is 11. And if I check 9 minus 11 over 2, does that equal negative 1? 9 minus 11 is negative 2. Negative 2 over 2 is, sure enough, negative 1. If I look at 3e, I'm going to go ahead and add 3 first. But before I do that, this problem looks a little scary, right? Because when you have a variable on the side of a fraction, where does he really belong? He really belongs on the top. So I have negative 6y over 5 minus 3 equals 9. So now I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I have negative 6y over 5 equals 12. So now to get y by itself, I have to move 5 because that's further away. So how do I move 5? I multiply by 5. So I have negative 6y equals 12 times 5, which is 60. And then I'm going to divide by negative 6 because it's 6 times y. So y equals negative 10. And if I check, I'm going to do negative 6 times negative 10 all over 5 minus 3. Does that equal 9? So negative 6 times negative 10 is 60. 60 divided by 5 is 12. 12 minus 3, sure enough, is 9. So if we go over here and we do this last one, I'm going to split up my equal sign. To move 10 to the other side, I move it first because it's furthest away, so I subtract it. So I'm left with negative 2a equals 16 minus 10, which is 6. I'm now going to divide by negative 2 because that's the inverse of multiplication. So a equals 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. And to check, 10 minus 2 times negative 3, does that equal 16? Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. 10 plus 6 is 16. If we go ahead and we do the last few questions on this study guide, it says, a skating rink holds parties that charges a rental fee of $100 plus $30 a person. Part A says, write an expression that the rink could use to determine how much to charge. So, charges a rental fee of $100, so I'm starting out spending $100, plus $30 per person. Do I know how many people were at the skating rink? No. So when it's per, that just means multiply, so it's going to be 30x. Part B says, use the expression you wrote in Part A to determine how much would be charged if 50 people attend. So 100 plus 30 times 50. So 100, 30 times 50 is 1,500. And then if I add 100 to 1,500, I get 1,600. So it's going to cost $1,600, $1,600 if 50 people attend. How much would it cost if 50 people attend, but the customer had a coupon for $200 off? Well, I would just take my answer from Part B, which was $1,600, and I subtract $200 from it. That's going to be $1,400. If I go ahead and I look at number 5, number 5 says the length of a rectangular map is 15 inches and the perimeter is 50. Find the width. So I do have a hard time with this, so I like drawing a picture. It says the length is 15, so that's 15 and that's 15. It says find the width, which means the width is x. And it says the perimeter is 50 inches. So how do you find the perimeter of a shape? Well, you add up all the sides. So 15 plus 15 is 30. X and x make 2x, and that equals 50. So now I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. So I have 2x equals 20. Divide by 2, so x equals 10. So that means the width is 10. 10 inches. And if we do number 6, it says Juan purchased a large pizza for $17 and then bought $12 for each of his friends. If the total bill at the pizza place was $26, how much was each drink? All right, so let's go back to the beginning. It says Juan purchased a large pizza for $17, so he spent $70, and then he bought 12 drinks for each of his friends. All right, so that means there's 12 friends, right? So he bought 12 drinks, but do we know how much each of the drinks cost? No, so it gets an X. This whole equals, his bill was $26. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solve, and I'm going to subtract 17. So I have 12x equals 26 minus 17, which is 9. And if I divide by 12, 9 divided by 12 is 0.75. Now I mentioned in class that I didn't like decimals, but when we're talking about word problems, decimals are okay because that relates it to money. So each drink cost how much? 75 cents.